Good morning. Welcome to 6 Feet Apart. I'm sitting here with Laura Kirsch, one of the administrative assistants here at Summit View. I've had the pleasure of working with Laura for 5 years. We've become good friends, and you're a joy to work with. And Laura is a super fun person and a really hard worker. It's my honor to sit here today with Laura and to share with you guys a promise of God that is near and dear to her heart. She's going to talk to us today about Psalm 107, verses 13 through 16. Laura is going to share with us a little bit about what that promise meant to God's people at that time. So this says, "Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death and burst their bonds apart. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. For he shatters the doors of bronze and cuts in two the bars of iron." So, Laura, do you want to just talk about what was going on there?
From my understanding, the Israelites were doing things their own way, and they were searching for gods with a little g and not looking to the one true God. And so they got to a point where they were at their lowest. And so when the verse picks up, it says, "Then they cried out." And they finally had gotten to their wits' end where they surrendered and cried out to God to save them.
Great. Isn't it sad that we often get to rock bottom before we cry out? How have you seen God be faithful to this promise in your life?
Well, many times, but specifically when I was in my 20s and I thought that I knew everything and that I could do everything on my own. I had grown up as a Christian, but I felt like that was old and ancient philosophy, so I needed to find what would work for me, and I got to choose how I lived. And at that point, there was a point where I got very low because all my choices weren't getting me what I was hoping for, and they weren't fulfilling me. And so at that point, I finally surrendered and cried out and asked God to save me from myself, basically, and the choices that I had made. And it wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't anything that happened overnight, but it was a process where God put people in my life because I was willing to surrender. And he chose different people that spoke into my life and spoke truth and challenged me, but then also I could see all those things that had hindered me from who God wanted me to be broken by just how he loved me and how he pursued me and how he put people into my life that would exude his love.
That's beautiful. Now, how in your life, your day-to-day life now, how does that play out for you?
I think just in a lot of the Old Testament scriptures, God is calling us to remember, and that scripture just reminds me of God's strength and his power to destroy any stronghold, anything that might be hindering us from being who he asks us to be and who he desires for us to be. And so as I look back on that season, I'm still always challenged to surrender. And it's a constant, it's day to day, it's every day that I just need to remember to surrender to him and cry out, because he's so quick. He doesn't hesitate. He will break everything free that I'm being held back by. But it's my surrender and my ability to humble myself to what he needs.
We don't often think that our choices restrict us. Earlier, you were sharing a great Spurgeon commentary with me. Do you want to share that with everybody?
Yeah. He talked about that in this passage, this particular passage, Spurgeon talks about that God didn't just open up the chains that were shackling the Israelites. He didn't just he broke things. He demolished all those things that were holding them back. The doors of bronze were destroyed, and that's our God. He's big enough to break us free of anything that we might be hindered from.
Yeah, that's just so great. I love the idea that God requires us to admit our need and our weakness, just like Paul says, that God is glorified in our weakness, and that it is Him who does all the rest. He provides, and He's just so faithful. Just in knowing that about God, what do you want our listeners to know today as they go throughout their week?
I think the most important thing is to cry out, to go ahead and humble yourself enough to surrender and say, God, I can't do this alone. I need you to break me out of whatever it is that I'm being bound by. And but also knowing that God is so faithful and His steadfast love. That scripture, it talks about steadfast love, and He never wants to withhold anything from us. He absolutely wants to give us what is best for us, and He never withholds His love or His faithfulness or His kindness, and so we can cry out to Him, and He's just ready.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us today. So we just want to encourage you, as this comes to a close, maybe set your phone down, spend some quiet time with the Lord, just crying out. We all have needs in different areas, and don't hesitate to reach out, to cry out to God. And then you mentioned earlier God putting community around you as you were crying out to Him, and that's just such an important aspect of growing and healing. So make sure that you've got some good community around you. If you don't have that, reach out to us. We'd love to get you plugged in. I just hope that you have a really good day today. Thanks for joining us.